Why all road leads to crab? There is a belief that all the living beings are slowly turning into the crab. Alright, because it is just efficient and it is the probable way to evolution. Now, I don't know if it is right or wrong, it is just a belief.
Documented some pretty odd behavior from coconut crabs on a small island in the Indian Ocean. He had set up cameras to better understand their foraging patterns.
Wow.
And in the middle of the night, one of the cameras showed a coconut crab climbing a tree. And yes,
There is a Souls like with crabs. Like I wanted to play that game. I saw many people playing it. I'll probably play that one.
climbing, eventually walking out into a low branch where a booby, a type of bird mind you, was sleeping. At that point, it then proceeded to stretch out its claw, lock them around the bird's wing, and boom, snap, breaking its wing and causing it to fall to the ground. Now, the bird tried to fight back, but he might as well have been fighting a living
Wow.
tank, as the crab did not give any quarter, and proceeded to smash the heck out of it, ultimately causing the bird to become paralyzed. And within 20 minutes of this starting, 5 more of its bloodthirsty homies had shown up to join the fun.
Damn.
And by
Crab
morning,
attack.
the bird was completely gone. And when I say gone, I mean eaten. Now, Mark also surveyed the surrounding islands and found something rather grim, which is that on islands with high coconut crab densities, ground nesting seabirds basically do not exist. On the flip side, the one nearby crab-free island in the survey found ground nesting birds were happily nesting on the ground like, well, any other
Ooh.
self-respecting ground nester. So in other words, an entire seabird community had been bullied, or rather made locally extinct,
Wow.
by an arthropod.
That-
Oh, and
to think
by the
that
way,
birds would
coconut
lose to
crabs aren't
crabs.
technically crabs. Yeah, the name's deceiving. And as it so turns out, coconut crabs are not alone in this. A surprising number of the animals we casually call crabs aren't actually crabs in the taxonomic sense. They just look like them. King crabs, not crabs. They're hermit crabs that gave up on the shell. Porcelain crabs, not crabs either. They're more close related to squat lobsters. The hairy stone crab clinging to rocks in southern Australia.
To be honest, there are so many animals and so many, like sea creatures that look like crab, but they aren't crab. But to a normal human, all of them are basically crabs, They have this same kind of structure, which is like claws, like lobster has it, some of the squids have it. Like it is same type of structure with claws and multiple legs. Like there has to be a reason why there are so many animals with same structure in the sea, because it probably works.
While also looking like a crab and being hairy, also not a crab. And
Yeah.
coconut crabs, the nightmare fuel that they are as we just established, also not crabs. And the really weird thing isn't just that they aren't crabs, it's that they aren't even closely related to them either. These are completely separate lineages of crustaceans that somewhere along their evolutionary history independently arrived at roughly the same body plan, despite
Yes.
starting from totally different taxonomical places. And this happens so frequently that there's even a name for it, carcinization, a term coined back in 1916
Carcinization,
by an English
wow.
zoologist named Lancelot Alexander Borradaile, who described it as nature's many attempts at evolving, well, crabs. And in a 2021 phylogenetic synthesis, researchers estimated that the fully crab-like body plan has evolved at least 5 times independently in different lineages, which is why there's a meme floating around the internet that says that everything eventually becomes a crab. Now obviously the meme isn't literally true, evolution isn't running around with some kind of crab-zapping wand, and humans, fortunately or unfortunately depending on your feelings about having claws, aren't going to be turning into one either. But the shape really has been reinvented again and again, in lineages with completely separate evolutionary histories. And the question of why turns out to be pretty interesting. Now, to actually get into the why, we need to define what becoming a crab really means. Because just saying looks like a crab is doing a lot of work, and not especially helpful, with the specific changes involved actually mattering. So to understand this, we need to go back to the basics, the starting point, if you will. Which for all decapod crustaceans,
Like imagine if ants were as big as dogs, that would be terrifying, Like you got what I'm saying, because insects are so efficient. Insects are so good at surviving that they would literally dominate anything if they were a little bit bigger.
is very roughly a more shrimp-like body plan, meaning elongated body, long muscular abdomen trailing out from behind, and a carapace longer than it is wide, etc. And that is the classic shrimp to lobster silhouette. And the really key thing about this is that the tail is exposed. And not only exposed, but also extended, and, well, useful. Because you see, lobsters and shrimp use that tail for what's called the charadoid escape reaction, which is basically when they flex the abdomen and tail and rocket themselves backwards to the water like organic jet skis. Now, it's fast and obviously works, but at the same time, from a predator's perspective, that long muscular tail hanging out from the back is basically a grab me sign, or perhaps a bite me sign. So, to become crab-like, the whole setup has to shift in a few coordinated ways. The shell on top has to flatten and widen, the separate plates on the underside merge together to form one wide, flat shield, and then the long abdomen has to shrink, fold forward, and tuck up under the body. And fun fact, there's actually a fancy developmental term for the tail tucking part, and that is called brachiorization, which is a sciencey way of saying the abdomen folds forward during metamorphosis. And remember that part, as we're going to come back to that in a bit, as the genetic mechanism behind brachiorization turns out to be a lot more interesting than the word makes it sound, and is basically one of the keys to this whole becoming a crab thing. But before we go there, quick taxonomic distinction. There are two major groups of crustaceans that we're talking about here. Brachyura, the true crabs, which originated as one lineage and stayed that shape with not so much variation, and is also the reason why it's called brachiorization. And then Anomura, a sprawling group that includes hermit crabs, king crabs, porcelain crabs, squat lobsters, mole crabs, and a bunch of other random characters. Now, the easiest way to tell them apart in person is to count the walking legs. True crabs have one pair of claws up front and 4 pairs of walking legs behind them. However, on the flip side, many crab-shaped anomurans have one pair of claws and only 3 obvious pairs of walking legs, because the back pair is reduced and tucked up under their claws and legs behind them.
Who decides that this is not a crab? Like why? Like why is this not a crab? I mean, they both look the exact same, you know? I mean, of course there is difference, but why does it matter? You got what I'm saying?
Or on the flip side, many crab-shaped anomurans have one pair of claws and only 3 obvious pairs of walking legs, because the back pair is reduced and tucked up under the carapace, where it mostly gets used for cleaning the gills. Small anatomical difference, yes, but it's important, as it means a king crab and a Dungeness crab, which is, yes, its actual name, who might be on your plate, are in reality, despite appearing to be cousins at the very least, are separated by hundreds of millions of years of independent evolution. So yeah, they are more distantly related than we.
So there was this fancy restaurant, okay? Like it was near my school. Basically what they used to do is they would basically make a crab dish, you know, like there will be a crab present. Wait, actually he did show. Like there was this another restaurant. They had like a fish tank outside. So all the kids just used to go and look at the fish. All right, we would just look at the fish after the school has been done. We'll just go and look at the fish just to have fun, you know. Like these things were so interesting, and they are reducing. Like no one does that anymore. Alright, now everything is like commercialized, you know. Like everything has a purpose, and like there are no fish tank lying around in restaurants. You get what I'm saying? Like there is like a soulless community, soulless society, like cyberpunk. Everything doesn't need to have a purpose, you know. It was just cool to look at. Imagine you had a restaurant and there were a couple of kids outside. Wouldn't you be happy? Now if you have kids gathering outside of a restaurant, it would be looked at something like they are probably harassing you, or they are annoying or something like that. But before, you know, it was supposed to be cool. If I own a shop, alright, I would love the kids to be there. Like, even if they don't purchase anything, it would be fun to talk with them, you know, like to be friends with the kids, kind of explain them everything. You get what I'm saying? Like it is a good stuff. It is what men are supposed to do. And now it is all like commercialized. You get what I'm saying? We don't even talk anymore.
By hundreds of millions of years of independent evolution. So yeah, they are more distantly related than we are to literally any other living mammal on Earth. Anyways, going back to the star players here, the crabs, well, not crabs, but crabs in name and crabs in shape and, well, you get the point. So, king crabs are one of the more dramatic transformations in this story, at least evolutionarily speaking.
Whoa.
You see, they aren't crabs, which, yes, has been established, but get used to hearing this. They're rather hermit crabs that decided to be a bit more social.
This looks so cute, man. These things look so cute. Damn it. Like, look at this, man. I love to look at them. Like, look at this. Like it is probably one of the strongest creature out there, but then still, I mean, look at it, how cute it looks, and they kind of get in bottles and
So,
everything
hermit
like
crab
that.
lineages have spent over 100 million years renting out discarded snail shells. Their entire anatomy has been shaped by that lifestyle. Asymmetric claws, because the larger one has to plug the entrance to the shell like a cork. A soft, uncalcified abdomen that coils perfectly
Wow.
into the inside of a
Oh no,
gastropod
that looks
shell,
disgusting. No, no, not glass. Give it anything other than glass, please.
and a growth ceiling that's basically capped by how big of an empty snail shell they can find on the seafloor, which means a hermit crab's entire life is essentially one long, stressful search for a home. In a
Wow.
landmark study from 1992, placed king crabs phylogenetically inside the hermit crab genus Pagurus, and pretty much every molecular study since has confirmed a hermit crab ancestry. So the idea is that somewhere in the past, selection started favoring hermit crabs that could calcify and harden their own abdomens, basically growing their own shells instead of renting one out. And once that shell size constraint relaxed, well, level up, as the lineage produced some absolute giants. For example, a big red king crab can reach roughly 28 centimeters or 11 inches across the carapace, and then a leg span of around 6
That's
feet or 1.8 meters, and weigh up
wow.
to about
That's so
28
big.
pounds or 12 kilograms. So in other
I
words,
feel like
basically a small
yeah, it was the king crab. It was
dog
the king.
with
This
very,
was the exact same crab that was there.
very long claws. And if you flipped one over, the abdomen is still subtly asymmetric, a leftover from an ancestor that once coiled into a spiral shell. Porcelain crabs, the family Porcellanidae, are another case of carcinization, but they went in a totally different direction. They evolved from a squalobster-like ancestor and stayed tiny, with some species so flat that they can squeeze into a crack thinner than your finger. What's odd is that their big front claws
What?
aren't really used to assist with eating. That's instead handled by feathery mouthparts that sweep plankton out of the water like a biological strainer, whereas the claws are then mainly used for defense and maybe beating up other porcelain crabs. Let me tell you, these guys are hella committed to the idea of not dying, to the point where if something just grabs one by the claw, the crab will just decide to self-amputate itself instead of risking it, essentially cutting off its own claw. And like seriously, it just pops it off, sprints away, and
That is so badass. I mean, okay, like crabs are probably one of the most badass creature ever. Like isn't this thing cool? Like, isn't it cool? Imagine, okay,
to the point where if something just grabs one by the claw, the crab will just decide to self-amputate itself instead of risking it.
like this is like a Dark Souls boss character kind of behavior. Like this is so badass. I mean, can you even imagine how human if human would do it? We would never do it. Like some people would rather not live than lose an arm or a leg. Like you get what I'm saying? Like crabs are so badass. I mean, they probably don't feel that much of pain, and some of them probably grows back up. I don't know.
Essentially cutting off its own claw. And like seriously, it just pops it off, sprints away, and then regrows a replacement over the subsequent molds like nothing happened, except perhaps for some lingering mental trauma. Which is honestly a pretty elegant solution to the specific problem of having evolved good armor, but also being bite-sized. And then phylogenetically, recent work suggests that the Porcellanidae actually represent one of the older carcinization events within the Anomura, being
Like,
considerably older than the king crab
what
lineage.
creature
So
in
basically the small porcelain crabs came
nature
first,
eats
and the giant
crabs
king
other
crabs are the new
than
kids on the
humans?
block, by comparison.
Like who
The
eats
hairy stone
crab?
crab, Lomus hirta, which is also my personal favorite, is from another family called Lomicidae. Now it lives in the rocky shores of
They are,
southern
built. They are built like such a thing. Like the probably other than humans, no one would be able to eat them anyway. Like they are so tough. You probably need tools to like boil them and stuff.
Australia, maxing out at about 2.5 centimeters, or roughly an inch across the carapace, and then is covered
That
head to
looks
claw
cute.
in a thick coat of brown, adorable fuzz. Obviously, the fur here is not for warmth, but rather to give the animal a muddy rock-like camouflage so it can cling under stones instead of trying to outrun anything. And then there's the coconut crab, Burgus latro, which we already met committing a felony at the start. Also not a crab, and also descended from hermit crab-like ancestors, just like the king crab, but this time going in a completely different evolutionary direction. As juveniles, coconut crabs
If it's not a crab, then who named them coconut crab? Like there is such a confusion among these. Even I'm confused half of the time what creature is what.
actually behave like ordinary hermit crabs, finding and wearing snail shells for protection. Then at some point during growth, they just stop. Instead of looking for a bigger shell, they just never look back. instead hardening their own abdomen. And as they get older, they also develop brachiostegal lungs inside where the gills are, which is basically gill-like tissue but specialized for breathing air instead of water, and essentially makes them land animals in the practical sense. Now, females still do have to return to the sea to release their eggs, but if you held an adult coconut crab underwater for any meaningful amount of time, it would actually drown, which is kind of
Wow.
wild in itself. A crab that can drown. No wonder it's not a real crab, am I right? That said though, they're not the only landlubber crabs who need air, and there are actually some true crabs that have also shunned the water. But I digress. Now, honestly, the coconut crab might be the most over-the-top quote-unquote crab, period, and by a wide margin at that. And that's not just regarding their whiteness, pun intended, as there's a lot going on with them beyond just the size. Take their sense of smell, for example. A 2005 study found that coconut crabs have evolved an olfactory system that doesn't really resemble other crustaceans at all. Their olfactory neurons look shockingly similar to that of insects, not only morphologically, but also behaviorally and physiologically.
Damn, this video is too smart for me, not gonna lie. Like I am lost. I am lost in my other thoughts, you know. I'm thinking of dumb stuff like what if, humans had hands like crab and other things like that. I can't concentrate at all, you know.
Which has been hypothesized as a potential consequence of the transition to land. And as is so fitting of their name, another study identified a specific volatile compound called acetone as one of, if not the chemical, that attracts them to food. And guess where this chemical can be found among other places? Yeah, in coconuts. So to recap, this is a crab not crab that evolved from a not crab to crab, while also picking up an insect-style sense of smell, so convergent evolution within convergent evolution. And coconuts. Then there are the tools of mass destruction.
You know, this evolution is such an amazing thing. Like, I don't like it is such an amazing thing to see, you know. Like, it is almost, it doesn't seem possible at all. Like, here is the thing. Alright, so as he said, all of the things are evolving into the crab. Alright, like some of them are, not all of them, and he didn't say it was true either. But here is the thing, if that is the thing, why are the previous species still there? Like in case of humans, okay, there are multiple theories that say the human are evolved from monkeys. If that is the case, why aren't all the monkeys human? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like a human, if obviously better, there are obviously more human than there are monkeys, right? So being a human is an advantage. Then why any other animal has not evolved into a human? Like, this evolution theory, it kind of makes sense in the case of some animals, like like dinosaur, and how they turned into the bird and then lizards, some of them, you know. Like, I get it, some of the big lizards turn into the smaller ones. Like, some of it makes sense, but then there are these other things like the monkeys turning into humans, and like, you know, the probably multiple sea creatures like crabs, for example. Like, that doesn't make that much of sense. But I would say the crab one makes a lot of sense than the humans
Or
one
at
do.
least, foul destruction. In other words, the claws. And when I say tools of destruction, I mean it. As a 2016 study which caught 29 wild coconut crabs, ranging in body weight from about 33 grams up to around 2.1 kilograms, and basically clammed each one onto a force sensor to see what they could do. And let's just say, they definitely could do. As individual pinches range from roughly 29 newtons at the low end to about 1,765 newtons at the high end. And when the researchers scaled their data up to a maximum recorded body weight for the species, around 4 kilos, they estimated a potential pinching force, if you can still call it that, around 3,300 newtons, which, just for context, the average human grip strength is about 400-ish newtons.
Wow. So that is so much. Like, that is almost 12 times.
So we're talking about an animal many times smaller than you, but has a pinch 8 times stronger than your hand. So maybe don't agree to thumb wrestle one of these guys.
This is the exact thing that I said. Imagine if it was as big as human, then how strong would that be? Like he would probably cut through the metals. You get what I'm saying? Like how strong is that? I mean, damn.
And their predator behavior does not stop at pinching. Coconut crabs will eat or try to eat just about anything, feeding on fruit, carrion, and will even engage in cannibalism, eating their own kind,
Wow.
because apparently chill is lacking despite being named after coconuts. Oh, and just to top it all off, they have been reported to be able to live up to 60 years.
Like they have such a cute name, coconut crab, and they are such large creatures. Like they are so massive, they are so strong. You know, like I would be scared to live with a crab. I mean, like how intelligent are they? You know, like I'm sure they are more intelligent than reptiles, right? Like snakes and other things like that. Crabs are probably a bit more intelligent than them, but I feel like they are less intelligent than a turtle and a mammal. Yeah, I mean that is, I think, the case is like they are little bit more intelligent than a typical reptile, but they are less intelligent than a turtle. It is such hard thing to measure.
Which for an arthropod is straight up unhinged.
Like some of the crabs are really dumb, you know. Like have you ever seen of those video where they kind of release the crab, and instead of running to the water, the crabs run straight into the predator's mouth. Like have you seen one of those video? Like that is insane, you know. Like some of the crabs are pretty dumb, but then again, they have survived more than humans
Okay,
probably.
so we've got king crabs, porcelain crabs, hairy stone crabs, and coconut crabs, all as independent carcinization events within Onamura. Plus, of course, the true crabs themselves over in Brachyura. So multiple separate inventions of basically the same thing. But as it so turns out, becoming a crab doesn't have to be a one-way street, even for the true crabs. Take the frog crabs. They are true crabs,
What?
which means their ancestors got crabified in the standard way a couple 100 million years ago or so. But somewhere down the line, selection for burrowing in loose sand started favoring a longer, more cylindrical, streamlined body, and the tucked tail started coming back out. And this is a real phenomenon that biologists call decarcinization. I know, shocker. And in that same 2021
Yeah.
synthesis I mentioned, researchers flagged at least 7 apparent losses of the crab body plan across the decapods. So evolution made a crab, took a second to look at it, and went, actually, never mind, put that tail back. And a few times over at that. And in between these extremes, you've got animals that show why carcinization is honestly better thought of as a gradient than a binary switch. Squall lobsters are a clean example of this, and the name, like normal I guess, is pretty misleading because they aren't really lobsters. They are onamurans, but they're more closely related to hermit and porcelain crabs than to anything you'd put in a bisque. Their carapace is somewhat flattened but still longer than it is wide, their claws are often weirdly, almost comically long, and their tail is partially folded under but then not fully tucked. So they kind of look like someone started building a crab at Build a Crab Workshop, but then got distracted halfway through and decided that it was good enough, which for their environment, it actually was. And speaking of environments and lifestyles, the crab body plan is pretty much like a Swiss Army knife, because it seems to do it all. Without the tiny end of the spectrum, you've got the peat crabs in the family Pinotheridae, which grow to just less than a centimeter and spend most of their lives living inside oysters, clams, and mussels. Well, then at the
Wow.
giant end, you've got the Japanese spider crab, Macrochira chimepheri, whose leg span can reach roughly 3.7 meters, or about
What? Damn, these things would be so terrifying to look at. Wow. Like, look at this thing. Wow, this is like, is this even a crab? Like, this looks like a big spider with claws, you know? Like, this is amazing. I mean, this is
12 feet from
amazing.
claw tip to claw tip, making it the longest leg span of any living arthropod. Then you have ghost crabs on the other hand, who are quite small, but can then sprint across beaches at speeds of about
Wow, that is
2.1
so
meters per
cute.
second, or roughly
Wow.
6.9 feet per second, all the while having muscle contract 2-point
What?
crabs on the other hand, or roughly 6.9 feet per second.
6.9 feet per second. Like, Damn. A human couldn't run that much in a second, can he? Wow, that is so fast for such a small thing.
All the while having muscle contractile properties and locomotor characteristics that look weirdly similar to those of a mammal, not a crab, which is not a sentence I would ever expect to say about, well, a crab. And then there's the coconut crab, which, as we covered, found the word pairings of ocean and no thanks, with chicken and yes thanks quite tantalizing. So clearly the crab shape isn't just specialized for one thing, which thus begs the question of why this shape is such a versatile, well, shape in the first place. And the answer is mostly mechanical. First off, a flat, wide body gives a lower center of gravity that makes the animal more stable on uneven surfaces like intertidal zones, while then also giving it its key ability, the sideways shuffle, which allows the crab to dart left or right, while most of its predators are forward-moving animals. And of course, the tucked tail removes what would otherwise be a perfect grabbing zone for would-be predators, as you literally cannot grab a crab by the tail, because duh, there is no tail to grab. Now, interestingly, true crabs likely originated around the Jurassic period based off of fossil evidence, but a lot of their modern lineages diversified during an interval of roughly 145 to 66 million years ago, and paleontologists call this stretch the Cretaceous Crab Revolution, and it overlaps with a broader event called the Mesozoic Marine Revolution, where marine predators evolved stronger jaws, more specialized drilling and crushing structures, and more efficient ways to crack, peel, and grind hard prey.
Wow.
And of course, when that happens, the pressure rounds the other way too, for
Poor crabs and. Wait, what is this thing called? I forgot.
prey. And so the whole marine ecosystem was basically a slow motion arms race for millions of years. Now, was it this event that drove the massive diversification event in crabs? Hard to say, but funny enough, it's often crabs that are included in the list of those shell-cracking predators, not as the prey themselves. So there's definitely something going on here. But regardless, the fossil record from this period also gives us some genuinely strange animals, with combinations of features unlike anything alive today. For example, Calica chimera perplexa, found in Cretaceous rocks in Colombia and described in 2019, has been nicknamed the platypus of the crab world because it combines a crab body plan, but with huge unprotected compound eyes and paddle-like legs for swimming instead of sidewalking, and all in a body about the size of a quarter. Then a 2022 follow-up study looked at its eye anatomy in detail and found that its compound eyes were enormous relative to its body size and grew rapidly during development, both of which are classic signatures of an active visual predator. So anyways, we have a decent answer for what carcinization is, when it was happening, and roughly why. But the last question still unanswered is the how. Like, what is actually happening that makes the same shape somehow so reachable for so many different lineages? And is it possible in humanity? Just asking for a friend. And so the answer to this is that a study on the Chinese mitten crab tracked gene expression during the metamorphic transition when the abdomen first folds under, and identified that certain genes showed decreased expression at exactly that moment, such as SCR and ANTP. Now, these are Hox genes, which is the family responsible for laying out the body plan of an animal during development, basically acting like the master architects, telling different body segments what to become. And so, unsurprisingly, these are deeply conserved across animals, like properly ancient as ancient can be, and show up in basically every bilaterian animal, so from flies all the way to kangaroos. And in crabs, these Hox genes get downregulated at certain developmental moments, driving the brachiorization. So what this means is that the entire crab look isn't being built by inventing new genes from scratch in each lineage. It's rather being built, or debuilt, by dialing down or up certain genes at the right moments during development. And so what this means is that for any decapod lineage that has these genes lying around, and they all do because Hox genes are pretty much universally conserved across animals, becoming crab-shaped is less about evolving a whole new body plan and more about turning levers on existing developmental instructions, which I guess you could say is the case for many evolutionary quirks, but still. So this is at least a clue for how brachiorization happens in true crabs, and is likely similar to what happens in Anomura. Now whether it's the exact same levers, that's an open question. But the takeaway is, as long as decapod crustaceans exist, so will crabs. And to answer that oh so burning question, no crab humans in the foreseeable future. And with that, I'll leave you here. Thanks for watching, and until next time.
Like, it is. Can you imagine a human as a crab? Like, what is a human going to turn into? It is a crazy thing. Here is what I feel, okay? So our fingers are going to turn a bit longer because of how we use everything, like keyboard and then our phones and everything like that. Our fingers are definitely going to be turning a bit longer. We will lose our toes because we don't really use them, and we will have a kind of a alien feet. And our probably lung size will get a bit smaller because we don't need to do that much of exercise. We will probably lose a lot of muscle mass because we don't have to work anymore. We don't have to do any work, physical labor, that is, I'm saying. And we would probably become more skinny and taller, I think. Yeah, that is what I think. What do you think humans will turn into? Let me know. And this was a great video. This was a great video. This was literally above my IQ level, to be honest, but it was a great video. I appreciate whatever I understood. Return to monkey or advance to crab. Damn, all load reads to crab. My ex tried to play this one on me. Nice try, living zoo. The grim darkness of the far future, there is only crabs. Okay. I mean, the sea life is such an amazing thing. Like, it is a complete different world, you know? Like, look at all of these things. There is so much that we don't know. Like, look at all of these things. It is amazing, man.